Do you remember the times when actually buying physical copy of the game was enough to get a full experience? Paperback manuals that are smelling like smell of adventure inside of the box? Other things like the map of in-game world. The time when term day one patch was an insult to a game developer. The time when mods were extremely fringe and not the part of main experience by any stretch. Over the last decade, it became pretty standard to ship unfinished and broken games. And main principle here is to sell minimally viable product and to let customers themselves to fix their purchase. In some rare cases, developers eventually fix their own creations literally years down the line, when the game already received like thousands of free modifications fixing numerous issues. The amount of malice intent from the huge corporations doing nothing while bathing in cash is becoming truly astonishing. Today I want to take a step back and to examine overall state of modding community. I want to discuss what are main pitfalls of modern PC gaming modifications and what are the trends that can push us even into more dystopian future than we are currently living. And as a final bit, I want to discuss our possibilities as gamers, modders, and even as customers. I have been modifying games ever since the high school. One of my first ever mods was for the Rome Total War in 2004, and some of my later and public modifications for the plethora of games have been downloaded thousands of times. While I could not really call myself a modder, I definitely like to install hundreds of mods on some of my games. From simple ship and portrait packs in Star Sector, to detailed cars and extra challenges in Project Zomboid, to complete conversions of Skyrim, to some questionable things like mod replacing zombies with telebubbles in Left 4 Dead. Then add to that my rather recent work on making 10-year-old Kerbal Space Program 1 to look actually visually better than Kerbal Space Program 2, well, you get the picture. Been there, done that. And totally run out of hard drive space with 10 modded installs of every single game. So call me out, prepare the pitchforks, exchange longevity of your keyboards for some data in Google database, but yes, I will sound like Johnny Silverhand in some of my takes. Well, at least I don't have fissile material for now. Although I have like 2-week beard, so that counts as something. One of the more popular gamer ideas is that any popular enough game will receive so many quality mods that any downfall of core gameplay systems is irrelevant when you buy the game. So in simple terms, bunch of unpaid volunteers will make a game produced and sold by a big corporate entity actually playable and enjoyable. The whole idea is great when your core game is absolutely incredible and is a piece of entertainment on its own. Idea of buying the game and having fun for solid 60 to maybe 100 hours before even touching mods is just something normal. But it all falls apart when you need a mod to enjoy a game or to have features once pitched as an idea for this game. And it becomes even worse when your game have technical issues blocking your progression or outright bugs solvable only by a mod. Yesterday I just encountered one of the typical examples with Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 release. Everyone just praises this iteration of Cyberpunk as something incredible, but I would give it maybe 6 out of 10. Why? Well, because I need a mod to fix my game or to load a save from 3 hours ago and pray for the best. During one of the main story missions, you get a visual UI glitch in your cyberware. This is triggered by one of dialogue options and it is completely intentional. What is not intentional is glitch persisting permanently instead of temporarily for a couple of seconds. After playing for 3 hours with, well, this glitch, I finally became dizzy and started to look for a solution. And there is no UI option to remove this effect from the game by default, and I think this is like a huge accessibility issue on the game development front, just like games that are lacking option to remove screen shake or something like a motion blur. I'm a person with a steel stomach and I can withstand some of the questionable attractions in Soviet Russia, and I never get motion sick. But I always disable bloody screen shake, motion blur and UI effects in every bloody single game. For this particular glitch there was a fix and it was not in UI options. And this glitch was present during launch years ago. And yet it's still there in highly praised Cyberpunk 2.0. The common fix proposed by one of the developers at the time in this Reddit thread was to reset your UI with other effects like drinking alcohol or EMP grenades. And they just never bothered to actually fixing the bloody issue. And now this glitch is fighting back in Cyberpunk 2.0 because, well, UI reset is no longer available. No, it's no longer working. You can reset the UI, but the glitch will still be there, so it will work for like half a minute, you will not have this glitch, you will have something to replace this glitch, but then it will be back, so you need to reload your previous save and pray for the best, but then this glitch will happen like a lot of times during the build story of the game, and the only way you can fix that right now is to actually install the mod. But this is an example of a small bug experienced by a small subset of your player base. What if your game is so broken that you need several dozen mods to have somewhat playable game? Most recent examples of that are lesser known Kerbal Space Program 2 and more mainstream Starfield. In the both cases, previous games from the same IP had incredible modding coverage. And yep, I can call Bethesda an IP on its own because term Bethesda game is a thing. Kerbal Space Program 1 and Skyrim have thousands of incredible mods expanding on the core games. And to a huge extent, this goodwill of community is exploited to sell the next product by a huge corporation. Bethesda is owned by Microsoft, while Intercept Games is owned by Take-Two. Both are corporations with trillions or billions of dollars in the assets. And Kerbal Space Program 2 have tag indie on the Steam storefront, because when you are published by a multi-billion publisher, you are definitely independent developer. LOL. In the case of Kerbal Space Program 2, we got barely working tech demo and, well, it maybe have something about 20% of core gameplay loops from the first game. In the 8 months, developers were unable to fix this mess of an alpha build, and everything considered the future of the game is pitched as, well, trust me bro. Some core gameplay issues like rocket wobble and randomly decaying orbits due to floating point calculation errors were never solved, and a lot of initial issues were resolved by modding community. Some fixes were the only option for several months straight, because, well, decent patch schedule is not on the list for this developer selling $50 early access title. In the end of the day, people just fed up and moved from this clearly abandoned demo sold at a full price of an actual game. There is 100 players playing KSP2 at best, any goodwill of community was irreversibly destroyed and mutilated by community management, the community manager that is calling Reddit users bots and anyone with critique of the game trolls. So beep bop, now I'm a troll and I need to find a breach. In the case of Starfield, it is complicated. To some extent it's too big to fail, and core game is at least like 30% decent, maybe half decent if you chill and cope really hard. Well, outside of NPCs and voice acting, this thing needs to be nuked from the orbit with something like size of the Pluto. There are dozens of clearly unfinished systems that either are to be expanded by DLCs or sitting there for modders to pick them up and shape into something decent and playable. And the amount of the mods that you need to make Starfield into a modern game and not something from like 15 years ago is absolutely staggering. From simple UI mods and tweaks, to irrelevant cutscene skips, to mods removing 30 FPS cap, to basic option features like field of view sliders, or something basic like proper alt-tab interaction on dual monitor setups. The list goes on and on. And I love to mod games, but man, why every single new game I need to install like 10-20 mods to actually make it something decent? Not... I'm just tired of this. Like, there's no fun. I want to install game, play it for like 60 hours, have fun, and then actually go and mod the hell out of it. Not before that. So it seems like gaming industry have a gambling addiction, and now every new game is a gamble on a goodwill and capacity of previously formed community. We live in an age where some corporate youth who never coded Hello World in his life is now trading a goodwill of a fanbase to make some easy money for shareholders and quarterly reports. Another very weak point of mods will fix it approach is, well, the mod longevity. There is no guarantee that any mod fixing critical systems will be just around a month or year later, let alone 10 or 20 years into the future. It becomes even worse when combined with early access and half-baked games. It took Cyberpunk 2077 3 years to get to the state where it's delivering around like 80 to 90% of its promise with 2.0 update. Just imagine if every single game from now on would release in the state of the Cyberpunk and maybe got fixed 3 years later. And even superfans like modders will not stick around with a single player game for years to keep their mods constantly updated for the latest patch. And more often than not, almost any major and quite often even minor patch will break mods. Sometimes it's just version check and just one line of the code, sometimes you need to rewrite half of the files with different values. And I'm talking about you, Paradox. You know, like there's a thing called dynamic IDs that kinda helpful when you mod the games. It becomes even more complicated when you add inter-mod dependencies. Sometimes one mod can rely on one or two or even half a dozen of other mods. This usually leads to players with, well, heavily modded games that disabling auto updates, and sometimes they are just playing outdated games for weeks, months, and even years to keep their favorite configuration. Some communities have heroes that will adopt old mods and keep them updated even if original creator is no longer around, but this case is extremely rare. And this leads to this idea of, well, official and centralized mod support from the developers relying, well, on mod will fix it approach. But as all things, well, corporates, anything decent becomes instantly money-making opportunity, and if you thought that developers will contract people to make mods and then themselves will keep third-party mods updated for years to come, well, this is not the case. The first big issue is the platform or centralization of paid mods. First attempt from Valve and Bethesda to monetize Skyrim mods in 2015 resulted in Valve taking 30% and Bethesda taking extra 45%, resulting in modders receiving only 25% cut from what people paid for their mod. Then you need to pay bank fees and taxes on top of that. And from my modder perspective, I'm just better off giving out my work for free than receiving a whopping 15% from my work after all fees and taxes. Obviously this thing just crushed and burned, but the idea and its idiotic iterations are out there in multiple forms. The biggest one is Bethesda Creative Club and, well, also known as the Plagiarism Club. People just took the bunch of free mods and charged money under the Bethesda banner and support, which is, yeah. Main selling point is that Bethesda approved mods will not corrupt your game or system. And this is sort of lead to another interesting issue is mods. Every time when you are installing a mod, you are taking a gamble. This is third-party software that can contain pretty much anything unless someone checks it. If you add to the mix the third-party distribution through independent platforms, well, it is quite easy to be a victim of malicious malware when you are installing the mod. Only thing separating modding community from grim malware reality is the word of mouth and reputation of any particular modder. Not a solid metric when it comes to security questions. And there were times when the mods contained malware. There was rather famous paid GTA graphic mod that contained malware wiping people's hard drives if they pirated the mod. Yeah, not only someone was tracking pirated installs through the malware, they also went out of the way to punish people by destroying their data. While this was totally shut down by the community, the reality is that something like this is just bound to happen when you are dealing with third-party software and, well, monetary questions. And there is the whole topic of modders locking their mods behind the paywalls, like Patreon. While I'm completely fine with well-established modders with portfolio of free mods doing early access thing for their next work, often than not, this just leads to paid mods through the paywalls, like Patreon. This leads to developers and publishers taking mod and copyright issue to yet another level, and while companies like Activision Blizzard start to put clauses into their license agreements forbidding third-party monetization of mods and straight up claiming ownership of user-created mods. And it goes even further with the games like Kerbal Space Program 2 claiming ownership of in-game user-created crafts through the user agreement. You know, when someone can legally claim your work as their own property, it is called legalized theft. Another moral question do arise when we think again about legality of outsourced mods. So it is clear that some developers go out of the way not to deliver full experience but still sell their product at a full price and hope that, well, the modders will fix it. People in general buy into marketing and promise of those games. Often than not, players never finish even the first half of the game for the variety of reasons, but they still pay the full price. And developing the full game still costs the full price for the developer. Even if majority of customers will never experience the fullest extent of that work, they still buy into this opportunity. But once you start to rely on modding community to make your game this full opportunity, you have basically cheated. If we just took amount of boxes sold for any popular game, it can be anywhere between million and even tens of millions. For example, Skyrim sold 60 million copies. But even if you take the most popular mods for the Skyrim, they will have only several 100,000 downloads. And this is for free mods. If this would be something paid, the numbers will go drastically down. So with the mod monetization like Bethesda Creation Club, as a customer, you basically got scuffed twice. First of all, you need to pay full price for unfinished game. Then you need to pay even more for your mod collection if you are a hardcore gamer. And even as the most successful modder, you are still scuffed like a customer as well, since you get only a fraction of people who are interested in your modification compared to amount of game sales. And as a modder, you are compensated from the pocket of those hardcore customers, not the game developer itself. This is extremely backwards if we are talking about mods will fix it approach. In the world of antiques like paper books, authors contracted under popular IP like Star Wars are getting compensated from the pocket of IP owner. And yes, there are sales and royalties involved, but often than not, it is IP owner who benefit from expanded universe and compensate the author to complete the initial work. But in the case of game development, it is somehow inappropriate to compensate mod authors from the pocket of the game developer, let alone on the basis of royalties tied to the sale figures of the game. And yeah, I know this is a stretch, but in the case of the Star Wars, we are talking about huge franchise and nobody will give you royalties from the movies if you are just reading the book under IP, and for all intents and purposes, the main Star Wars movies do not benefit from the book sales. But in the case of games, we are usually talking about mods being integral part of marketing and sales, directly benefiting a single main product. In a perfect world, every mod creator after certain reasonable threshold would receive royalties from the game sales. And in this case, although fully compensated for their creation, mod itself should be free, safe, licensed and continuously supported by the game developer itself. I know, what a bizarre concept to pay for the things you are benefiting from, especially if you are a huge corporation. So, when everything goes downhill, what to do? Well, you can just sit back, relax and watch the world burn and make some jokes about that, because, well, actually having fun is great for your health. And those rich and powerful people at the helm of those corporations, they do not like when people laugh about them. And you know, like things like Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 release, well, it should not be a norm, like getting 3 years after selling your game to actually fix the game, or like No Man's Sky. This is not alright, this is not something that should be praised. And the notion about license mods, the creation club thing, actually getting royalties from the pocket of developer, not the pocket of the customers, this is a huge topic that should be pushed more, because if it will not be pushed by the customers themselves and the modders, we will never get to this reality when, well, the mods will fix it actually cost the developer something and not nothing. And I think that would be a wrap for this video. Thank you very much for watching, have a nice one, and Yakis out!